There is a runway at Gatwick Airport that has existed for decades and has almost never been used the way it was built to be used. £2.2 billion is about to change that. And the fix isn't a new runway, a new terminal, or a mile of fresh concrete. It's 12 meters. Let's get into it. Gatwick is the busiest single runway airport on the planet. Over 40 million passengers a year funnel through one strip of tarmac, while a second, fully paved runway sits just to the north, doing almost nothing. That's point one, and it's the whole reason this project exists. Here's point two. The reason that second runway sits idle isn't money, and it isn't politics. It's physics. International aviation safety rules require a minimum separation between two active runways, so aircraft don't create dangerous wake turbulence for each other, and Gatwick's runways are spaced just short of that threshold. Close, but not legal for simultaneous use. And here's point three. The one that makes this story worth 15 minutes of your time. The solution the airport landed on, after years of engineering study, is to physically shift the northern runway's centerline 12 meters to the north. That's it. 12 meters of repositioned tarmac, and an airport built for one active runway becomes an airport built for two. Let's break down how that small number turns into a £2.2 billion project. Part 1. The bottleneck. Right now, Gatwick's northern runway lives a strange double life. During the day, it functions as a taxiway, guiding aircraft around the airfield. At night, when the main runway shuts down for maintenance, it becomes a standby runway, quietly filling in. What it has never legally done is operate alongside the main runway during normal operating hours. Think about what that means in practice. One of the busiest airports in Europe has been running at roughly half its runway capacity for its entire operating life, because a rule written for aircraft safety, not for convenience, has kept the second runway on the bench. That's the tension the entire project is built to resolve. Part 2, the fix. Moving the center line 12 meters north brings the spacing between the two runways within global safety standards for a specific kind of dual operation, not full simultaneous departures for every aircraft in the fleet. Wide-body long-haul jets still need the main runway. But smaller aircraft will be able to depart from the repositioned northern runway at the same time the main runway is handling everything else. Split the traffic, run two operations at once. Let an airport that's been breathing through one lung suddenly breathe through two. The projected outcome: passenger capacity rising from around 40 million a year to about 75 million by the late 2030s. Roughly 100,000 additional flights annually. An airport doubling in scale without a single new acre of runway footprint added to the landscape. Part 3, it's not just the runway. The runway shift is the headline, but it's only one piece of a much larger overhaul. Gatwick's plans include expanding its terminal buildings to handle the extra passenger volume, reworking taxiways and stands so aircraft can move efficiently between two active runways instead of one, and upgrading the surrounding road and rail links that feed tens of thousands of people into the airport every day. That last piece matters more than it sounds. An airport can double its runway capacity and still fail if the trains and roads around it can't handle the extra people arriving to catch those flights. As part of the approval conditions, Gatwick has committed to increasing the share of passengers who arrive by public transport rather than by car, a target the government made central before granting consent. It's a reminder that a mega build like this doesn't end at the airfield fence. It ripples outward into rail timetables, road capacity, and how an entire region moves. For the airlines that fly out of Gatwick, this changes the calculus too. More departure slots mean more room to add routes, add frequencies, and compete more directly with rivals operating out of larger hubs. For years, airlines wanting to grow at Gatwick have been boxed in by the same single runway ceiling passengers feel in the security queue. This project quietly rewrites that ceiling, and airline route planners have almost certainly been watching this approval as closely as any local resident has. Part 4. The timeline. This wasn't approved overnight, and it shouldn't have been. Gatwick filed its formal application in 2023. The Planning Inspectorate spent roughly 6 months conducting a detailed examination, hearing from engineers, airlines and residents living directly under the flight path. In early 2025, the Transport Secretary issued a conditional approval decision with specific requirements still to be satisfied around noise and public transport access. Gatwick spent the following months answering those conditions, and on the 21st of September 2025, the government granted full development consent, a decade-long planning process distilled into a single signed order. Here's a detail worth sitting with. The entire £2.2 billion is privately financed, funded by Gatwick's shareholders through Vinci Airports with no taxpayer money involved. In an era when so much infrastructure leans on public funding, this project is being built entirely on private conviction that the demand will be there to justify it. That conviction is already reshaping the region around it. The airport projects roughly £1 billion a year in additional economic activity and around 14,000 new jobs across the south of England. Local councils, including Croydon, have already built growth plans around the expansion landing, treating the runway's approval less like a possibility and more like a foundation to build on. Part 5. The comparison worth making. It's worth putting this next to the UK's other famous runway saga just down the road. Heathrow has been trying to build a third runway for the better part of 3 decades, tangled in court challenges, shifting government policy, and public funding debates that have never fully resolved. Gatwick took a different path entirely. Instead of fighting for new land and a brand new runway, it built its case around an asset that already existed, already had planning history behind it, and only needed a 12-meter nudge to unlock. That difference in approach is very possibly why Gatwick has a signed development order today, while Heathrow's third runway remains, after 30 years, still a conversation rather than a construction site. Part 6. The fight that isn't over. Approval was never going to end the resistance, and it hasn't. A local campaign group, CAGNE, has vowed to pursue a judicial review, arguing the project underfunds noise mitigation and essential infrastructure like wastewater treatment. The Green Party has called the decision a disaster for UK climate commitments. These aren't fringe objections. They're the same argument every airport expansion eventually has to answer. What does growth cost the people who live beneath it? That tension doesn't resolve neatly here, and it shouldn't. 100,000 more flights a year is both real economic growth and real added noise, happening in the same 12 meters of shifted tarmac. The project's supporters call it one of the most important infrastructure opportunities in the country. Its opponents call it a fossil, fuel-era answer to a problem the era demands something different for. Both descriptions are true of the exact same plan. Part 7. The bigger idea. Most airport expansion stories follow the same script: buy more land, pour more concrete, push the footprint further into the countryside. Gatwick's story breaks that pattern. Somewhere in this airport's history, someone looked at a fully functional runway, sitting half-used for decades, and asked a simple question: why does this only work at night? That question, and the 12-meter answer to it, is the real story here. The biggest unlock available to an organization isn't always a new asset. Sometimes it's finally using the one already sitting on the ground, underused, for reasons nobody had found the will or the money to fix. Construction is expected to unfold in phases over the coming years, with Gatwick continuing to operate as a live, working airport throughout. No shutdown, no pause, just an upgrade happening in real time around ongoing flights. The northern runway is targeted to be handling regular commercial departures by around 2030. A distant sounding date, until you remember the hardest part: winning approval after a decade of scrutiny is already behind it. So picture Gatwick a decade from now, a runway that sat underused for most of its existence, finally doing the job it was built for. A single 12-meter shift responsible for doubling what the airport can carry, and a legal and political argument, still unresolved, that will keep shaping how much of that growth the surrounding communities are willing to absorb. The concrete for this one is already there. What's being built right now is permission, patience, and the will to finally use it. If you found this one interesting, send it to someone who'd appreciate it too, and consider subscribing for more.